what is happening with all these other guys who are creating their own Bitcoin? I mean, I don't know their names, but I don't, I just stay with Bitcoin, but I don't go outside of that, which is maybe stupid. But do you look at other coins? Hello, 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 Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And what we're doing over the next few weeks is we're talking about specifically Bitcoin. And the question is that the future of money? And as you guys know, being an old guy like me, I know nothing about technology. I barely use my cell phone. So Bitcoin is a strange animal to me, yet I think it is the future. Our guest today is Anthony Pompliano, Pomp as they call him. And he is one of my go-to guys when I need to know something. I call the younger guys now. I don't call old guys about Bitcoin. So, and Anthony, you were also in the army or something?
I was in the Army.
What did you do in the army?
I started out as a combat engineer and finished up as a sergeant in the infantry.
Good for you. Good for you. Did you serve overseas and all that?
I did. I went to Iraq in 2008, 2009.
How was that for you?
I mean, I went when I was 20 years old. You're too stupid to understand that it's dangerous. And, thankfully I came back and it served as a great life experience.
Right. The reason I ask you that is because I was flying these things in Vietnam. This the Huey gunship, and I was a Marine pilot. But that's when I first started buying gold. So this was 72 because Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, and the U.S. dollar became trash. So that's when I started buying gold. And for your generation, it's Bitcoin. And I think this is the book that we all have in common here. It's called The Creature from Jekyll Island. I mean, I studied this book left up one side and down the other by G. Edward Griffin, a recommended reading. And if you ever want to know why you should be buying Bitcoin, this is your reason here. Is that we have a central bank. It's also called a centralized bank, which is also communist, centralized banking. And I read this book here. It's called The Grunch of Giants. And this came out in 84. And this was writing about how our wealth is stolen via our money, via inflation and taxation. So that's why Bitcoin is the new thing right now. We're going to a whole week of different people on it because I don't know that much. And I think it's the future. But again, Rich Dad makes no recommendations. You got to think for yourselves. And so Anthony Pompliano is one of those people I go to. And so, Anthony, welcome to the Rich Dad Radio Show.
Thank you so much for having me. I learned from you for years and you've been incredibly kind to me. So happy to help out.
Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. I feel comfortable. I think I have 64 whole Bitcoin, and I know it's not a lot, but it's a good start. So
It's a great start. And I think that your point about, gold bugs and kind of Bitcoin holders, they like to kind of jab at each other on the internet, but I actually think they're on the same team. And this idea that inflation is eating away at purchasing power. I was looking at the data just recently. The aggregated inflation since January of 2020 to today is over 22%. So that means that $1 of purchasing power in January 2020 today is the equivalent of 78 cents. And so if you've just been sitting in cash, you're literally losing purchasing power. You're losing value of your money. And so you
right,
got to get out of cash and get into some other type of asset. And whether that's gold, that's Bitcoin, some people even buy stocks. But getting out
yeah,
of cash, I think, is kind of the intelligence test of financial markets for this generation.
right. I always say if the government can print it, I don't want it anymore. But anyway, so tell us. Well, we're talking before the thing began about what's going on in New York City, about the luxury hotel accommodations for Biden's immigrants coming across the border.
Yeah, look, I think that there's this, across the country in general, I think that there is just a degradation of, one leadership, two, what I'll call the system is probably the bigger story. And what that means is if you go back 10 or 15 years, not really that far, and you look at how society operated, maybe even some of the values that people all agreed upon, those seem to be loosening at best and at worst falling apart. And
Right,
so in New York City today, any large city with 9 million people has a lot of problems. They got a lot of complexity that they got to handle. Now there is this compounded complexity that comes from migrants, and there's a lot of them showing up. And so, in America, we try to be as hospitable and humane as possible, and you want to get these people some sort of housing. But you're on an island, right? And specifically in Manhattan, what are you going to do? And so, one of the things that they have tried to do is they've gone to hotel owners and they've said, look, we will buy all of the hotel rooms that you have. We'll book them out and we'll even pay you not market rent. We'll pay you a little bit more than the market rate so that you will be willing to do this. And so if you're a hotel owner, somebody comes to you and says, hey, normally you're 60, 70% occupied. You'll be 100% for the next, 6 months, and I'll pay you above market rate. It's pretty tempting to do. But what that ends up doing is now it is providing, more and more of an incentive. More people keep coming, more people keep showing up, and so I don't know where it ends. But what I do think is that there's an entire portion of the population that's saying to themselves, "Okay, that's just one topic, right? If you look at politics, there's 50 of these topics. I'm losing faith. I'm losing trust. And so what I want is I want to find certainty in an uncertain world. And something like Bitcoin is being a winner or kind of getting the benefit of these people looking for certainty because there's an entire generation of people who think that Bitcoin is that thing that no one can create more of and no one's going to be able to take from them.
Right. But the other thing too is that Bitcoin is outside the control of the government, and our government's lost control. Like I was saying to Anthony that the last time I was there, they almost wouldn't let you shop. I go out, I knock on some high, Fifth Avenue door. They want to make sure I wasn't carrying a gun, wasn't going to steal anything. And our whole society is breaking down, which is why we're having this special the next couple of weeks. All the experts on Bitcoin and the people I turn to and I ask for information on why Bitcoin is the future. So I have lots of gold. I own gold mines. I have lots of silver. I own silver mines. And I own, like I said, 65 Bitcoin. And I understand the advantages of gold, silver, Bitcoin. They all have their advantages. But Bitcoin is probably the least understood. So, Anthony, why are you so bullish on Bitcoin?
Well, if you think of, what makes gold, let's start there first. Like what makes it valuable, right? It's this idea that it has sound money principles. To your point, it's outside of the system and no one can create more of it, right? And that's really attractive. And it's done incredibly well since 1971 because outside the system and no one can create more of it. Bitcoin is the exact same thing. But rather than it being in an analog version, it's in digital version. There's a software that has been written that allows for a finite supply, 21 million Bitcoin. It's outside of the system and no one can create more. And so, one of the reasons why I'm probably the most bullish on Bitcoin is in my career, anytime that you saw something that was the digital version of an analog asset, the digital version usually ended up becoming worth more than the analog version. And so if you think about music, right, you could go buy one CD. Now you have Spotify or Apple, and you can go and stream every song in the world. Do the thing of Amazon having one bookstore versus having any book at your fingertips through the Amazon store. And so same thing here is I think that Bitcoin eventually, because it is digital, but it has those same properties as gold, people around the world will have easier access to it. They'll eventually continue to buy it. And because you have a finite supply asset, you have increasing demand, the price of that asset has to go up to accommodate everyone.
So this is my question because I've asked this all the guys. I'm a girl wholeheartedly with you, but I'm not Satoshi. I'm Japanese, but I'm not Satoshi. What's it, Nakamura or something? But anyway, what is happening with all these other guys who are creating their own Bitcoin? I mean, I mean, I don't know their names, but I don't. I just stay with Bitcoin, but I don't go outside of that, which is maybe stupid. But do you look at other coins?
If you kind of think of the traditional financial markets, you have money, right? So you have dollars, you have euros, you have yen, you have pesos, etc. I would even put gold in there, right? But things that are trying to hold monetary value, either as a store of value or a medium of exchange. And then you have tons and tons of companies. And these technology companies or non technology companies are all competing with each other. But in your day to day life, you are a monetary maximalist. And what I mean by that is if you live in the United States, you get paid in dollars, you save in dollars, you pay your taxes in dollars, right? And you spend dollars. I don't in the United States sit and hold Mexican pesos or hold euros or anything else. But if I lived in Mexico, I'd be using Mexican pesos, right? I wouldn't be worried about dollars or other things. So
Yeah.
you become a maximalist, only using one currency to save and to spend. I think that's what happens in the digital world as well. You're going to have one currency, you're going to use that one currency, right? So let's say Bitcoin becomes that store of wealth and the thing you want to spend. But nobody I know has 100% of their wealth all in a single currency with no other assets, right? They have a stock, they may have, oil or some other commodity or whatever. And so the rest of the cryptocurrencies, they're not trying to be money, they're trying to be technology platforms. And so just like Amazon, Google, and Facebook all compete with each other, many of these other cryptocurrency tokens are doing the exact same thing. And so what I tell people is my version of kind of the future is that Bitcoin ends up being the big winner when it comes to a currency and will store value. Think of it as just digital gold. And then all of these other tokens, they're going to be hyper competitive. There will be major winners and major losers. And so if you want to go and try to understand the technology and predict who's going to be the winner, who's going to be the loser, you can go do that just like you can in the stock market. But if you're simply just looking for a store of value, Bitcoin will kind of be the thing that'll serve that purpose for you.
That makes more sense. Well, thanks for that. And we have this thing called a halving. What is a halving?
Yeah, so because it is a digital asset, everything is programmatically created, meaning that somebody wrote the software, Satoshi Nakamoto, and it can't be changed, right? Or it's not going to be changed. And so part of that was if you have 21 million Bitcoin, how do you get the 21 million Bitcoin into circulation? Right? You almost think of it like it's sitting in like a digital bank, but you got to get it into the hands of the people. And so the system that was created was that every 10 minutes, 50 Bitcoin would be released into circulation. And that would go on for 4 years. So every 4 years, 50 Bitcoin was being given out for 10 minutes. But after that 4 years, 50 Bitcoin dropped to 25. So it got cut in half from 50 every 10 minutes to 25 every 10 minutes. That continued for 4 more years. And then we get cut in half again from 25 to 12 and a half. And now this has continued all the way till today. And so every 4 years, there's quote unquote halving, which is really just we're cutting in half the amount of Bitcoin that comes into supply every single day. So today, 900 Bitcoin per day come into the circulating supply. Starting next, after this next halving, it'll end up being 450, and that will continue for 4 years. And so it's simply a supply shock, which if you pay attention to gold or other types of commodities, when you have a supply shock and demand stays the same, usually that ends up pushing the price up higher.
So, and another thing we're going to talk about is before the second half, I want to get into it with you, but this thing called the ETF is coming up. But what would you suggest to anybody who has never invested in Bitcoin? What cautions would you issue? What would you say?
Yeah, people always ask me, what should I do? And the first thing I tell them is go learn, go read first. Don't do anything with your money, go learn. And I think the best way to do that is you can just search on Google Bitcoin white paper and you can go and you can actually read. It's a 9-page paper that'll allow you to read exactly what Bitcoin is. And that'll help you get started. You can Google what is Bitcoin, etc. What you have to understand about Bitcoin is it's highly volatile, right? It goes up a lot, it goes down a lot. Sometimes it goes down as much as 80%. And so you've got to really understand what you're buying. You've got to only put money in that you're willing to lose. And then I think that also people should really spend the time and only buy assets that they feel like they understand. And so when you realize I've done the work and you're compelled, sure, then go buy Bitcoin just like everyone else seems to be doing, but only do it after you've really done the work and understand the risks that are associated with it.
I also heard this one guy before we go to break that old guys like me shouldn't buy Bitcoin because we can't take the heart attack when it goes down. What do you think?
No, I mean, look, when you want financial returns, you need volatility. It's just that people say, hey, if something goes up a lot, it's being volatile to the upside. You like that volatility because it's going in the direction you want. What people don't like is when the volatility goes in the opposite direction that they want. And so, again, if you're going to look at or hold a volatile asset, then what you need to do is just understand it's going to go up, it's going to go down. And really, it's about being time in the market, not necessarily timing the market. So don't try to pick tops and bottoms of the market. Just use great financial principles like buying the asset and holding it for a long time.
Okay, so thank you. Well, we're going to go to break and I'm going to come back. And one of the reasons I have 65 coins, I just buying a little at a time. And every time I learn a little bit more. Yeah, I didn't put my whole nest egg in there. So we come back, we're going to talk to Anthony about this Bitcoin ETF. And I'm excited about it. I didn't expect that to come along. but I think it's going to make me even richer, even though I only have 65 Bitcoin. So we're right back talking to Anthony Pompliano, Pomp, and we're talking about, should you invest in Bitcoin, or has the train already left and you've been too late? So we'll be right back.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Kiyosaki, co-host of the Rich Dad Radio Show. And I want to thank today's sponsor, our friends at Gold Alliance. We should all be concerned about high inflation, a looming recession, the very troubled banking system, and out-of-control spending in Washington. And the fact is, during every major crisis in U.S. history, many of those who failed to prepare watched their savings, investments, and retirement funds plummet, while others with the foresight to own gold helped preserve their wealth and purchasing power. Now, we're facing several major crises at once, and we may soon face even more economic turmoil. So please don't wait. Consider gold and put yourself on the road to financial peace of mind. The new free 2023 Gold Guide from our friends at Gold Alliance can show you how. Just visit www.freegoldguide.com/Robert or call 1-800-473-4585. Republican governor and conservative commentator Mike Huckabee says Gold Alliance is the only gold provider he recommends to his friends and family. Please visit freegoldguide.com/Robert or call now at 1-800-473-4585. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Kiyosaki, co-host of the Rich Dad Radio Show. Robert and I have warned that 2023 was going to be a roller coaster of volatility. After all, the stock market is largely flat this year, except for a handful of tech companies. And other asset classes are struggling to meet expectations. One survey reveals that living paycheck to paycheck is the most common lifestyle in America, even for those making six-figure incomes. Combined with hundreds of thousands of layoffs in just the last few months, it's clear a financial storm is brewing. The question to ask yourself is, are you safe? For years, Robert and I and other investors have been putting more and more money into assets that can still climb when the stock market flatlines. One investment that doesn't seem to be affected by the ups and downs of the stock market is art. In fact, one of our close friends and advisor recommends art as his number one asset protection. Even more, contemporary art prices have outpaced the S&P 500's total return over the last 27 years by 136%. If you think art as an investment is something you want to pursue, then there is a vehicle that allows you to do that without investing millions, thanks to Masterworks, our longtime sponsor. Their platform lets you invest in shares of painting by icons like Picasso and Banksy. Masterworks now has $800 million in assets under management. But thanks to our friends at Masterworks, you can skip their waitlist. Just click the link in the description for this episode. Offerings have sold out in minutes, but Rich Dad listeners can skip the waitlist going to masterworks.art/richdad. That's masterworks.art/richdad. See important disclosures at masterworks.com/CD.
Feeling powerless over current events and your financial future? Financial freedom is your freedom. Robert Kiyosaki is the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Over 40 million people have taken Robert's advice. Now it's your turn. Attend Robert's free virtual wealth building event. Claim your free access now at richdadfree.com. Don't wait, access is limited. Go to richdadfree.com. That's richdadfree.com.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money, but today especially Bitcoin. I'm going to do a whole series because Bitcoin, all the young guys are kicking our butts right now, and I've been an old guy for all these years. I call young guys like Anthony Pompliano, and I find out. So I started buying a little bit at a time, so today I have 65 Bitcoin. And my question to you, Anthony, is this. So I think Bitcoin today is about 45,000 or 40,000 today.
Yes.
So what happens if somebody doesn't have 40K?
Yeah, the beauty of Bitcoin is that you can buy fractional pieces of it. So one Bitcoin is, call it $45,000 or so, but you can go and you can buy $5 worth of Bitcoin. You can buy $10 worth of Bitcoin, and you don't need to have the $45,000 to buy a full Bitcoin. think there's a lot of people who, that's a shiny thing, right? To get to one full Bitcoin. But you can start, like many people do, with, $5, $100, $1,000, whatever you want to kind of start with, and just buy a little piece of Bitcoin to really kind of start that journey.
And who does that? Who does that brokerage?
You can go a number of different places. Coinbase is probably the most recognizable exchange in the United States. It's a publicly traded company, like $30 billion market cap valuation. But now we also have these ETFs that are coming, kind of Bitcoin
Right.
spot ETFs that recently got approved as well.
Right. And so before I got one more horrible question to ask is our buddy Sam Bankman-Fried. And what the hell did he do? I mean, what you guys think of him? He's about your generation.
Yes, Sam was a young entrepreneur. He built a company very quickly called FTX. Kind of rose up. They had billions of dollars of customer assets on their platform, and they did some pretty nefarious stuff, it appears. And eventually, kind of their scheme was exposed. Regulators and law enforcement stepped in. He eventually was arrested. He went to trial. He was convicted, and is now awaiting sentencing in that situation. And so, anytime that there's a new space or new industry, you can go all the way back to the internet, cell phones, etc. People are going to do bad things, right? But you've got to be able to separate out the bad actors from the technology itself, or from
So
the innovation.
that's my question. How do you protect yourself from an SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried?
Yeah, I mean, look, the crazy part is this stuff happens in the traditional financial system as well, right? That there's frauds all the
Right.
time,
Oh,
and
yeah.
crime, and et cetera. And so,
My,
in
my,
general,
my, my generation had Ivan Boesky. I mean, he took a lot of people's money.
I actually just read a book called "Witness to a Prosecution," which was written by Michael Milken's lawyer, and obviously
Right.
Ivan Boesky is a key part of that book.
Yeah.
If you think of kind of common practices, so one, use common sense, right? If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. It's kind of like a really
Okay.
simple one. But I think also what you want to do is you want to use regulated exchanges. So Coinbase being regulated in the United States, right? In the public markets, overseen by the SEC, et cetera. And then the other thing is now that these ETFs are coming to the market, they're provided by BlackRock, by Fidelity, et cetera. And one of the things that people have to kind of think through is you're not actually buying Bitcoin when you buy the ETF. You're buying exposure to the price of Bitcoin, but it's different than Bitcoin. And so usually what I tell people is if you want to own Bitcoin and make sure no one can take it from you, you can actually withdraw it into something called self-custody. Think about going to the ATM and taking the money out and putting it in your wallet. You own it. You got it in your pocket, right? No one, unless somebody comes and hits you over the head with a hammer, is going to get that cash from you. Same thing with Bitcoin is you can basically take self-custody. What most people, though, they're worried about it. They're scared, right? They don't know how to do it. And so if you don't want to spend the time to learn, then you've got to either go and use something like a Coinbase, or you've got to go and look at these ETFs, but just understand that you don't actually own Bitcoin. You simply are getting price exposure to Bitcoin when you buy the ETF.
So would you buy an ETF, Bitcoin ETF?
So I have in my retirement account exposure to one of the ETFs, and it's in my retirement account, getting self custody of retirement funds. There's a whole bunch of complexity there. So definitely in that situation, it makes sense just buy the ETF. In my non-retirement account, no, I'm buying actual Bitcoin. I want to hold the Bitcoin, right? I want custody over those assets. And so I think what you really got to do is just kind of ask yourself, what am I trying to accomplish here? How comfortable am I in terms of self-custody? And each person will make that individual decision for themselves.
Well, let me. You can shoot my theory full of shit, full of holes if you want, but my theory is when you go to an ETF, it raises the price of Bitcoin because there's a fixed amount, 21 million. But when it went to ETF, you opened up demand. I mean, you made every mom and pop, who may have $1,000 in their wallet, or they may have a retirement account, every retirement account around the world. It opened that up to supply demand. But when you went to the ETF, the demand went through the roof. So that's why people are calling for $300,000 Bitcoin, $500,000 Bitcoin. And I bit the hook, line, and sinker. You don't chase shiny objects. But when I heard the ETF was coming in, I mean, it's not much, but a little 65 coins. If it goes to, let's say, 100,000, that's pretty good money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that definitely the ETF will increase demand. One of the interesting things is there was a lot of financial advisors, a lot of asset managers that they were kind of curious about Bitcoin and they were trying to learn about it, but they had this overhang. The regulators hadn't really kind of approved it yet. There was no way to buy it via an ETF. Now that that's been removed, my guess is that not all, but many financial advisors, they'll say, let's go put 1% of our kind of clients' assets in this ETF. Let's go buy a little bit into the portfolio. It seems to have done really well over the last 15 years. I think it'll still do well, but I'm not going to go take 100% of my clients' assets and put it into it. Well, even though it's only, let's call 1%, that is still an increase in demand that's pretty meaningful for an asset that today is about $900 billion. And so I do expect the ETF to open access, as you said, increase kind of capital flowing into the asset class. And ultimately, over the long run, it will help to push the price higher.
Do you do those, Bitcoin to 300K, do you do those projections or
So
prediction?
if you go back in 2019 or 2020, I came out and Bitcoin was trading at about $8,000, and I said it's going to go up a lot. And somebody said, "Well, how much?" I said, "I don't know. It's going to go to $100,000 by December 31st of 2021." And people were like, "Wow, that's a huge number." And so
Mhm.
Bitcoin went up about 8 or 9x from when I said that, but it didn't go to 100K. And what I learned was, even though I was correct and it's going to go up a lot, the fact that it didn't go to exactly 100K means I was wrong. And so no more price predictions. But what I tell people is, I am not selling my Bitcoin, which maybe is the best signal in terms of what I think will continue to happen with the price. But I will issue kind of a word of caution. I don't know if I necessarily believe the people who think it's going to 500K or a million, in the next year or 2 years. I think that now that we have kind of a much more diversified holder base, many more kind of financial advisors, that capital is much stickier. And so when you have sticky capital, the volatility should get dampened down. And so it'll continue to go up and it'll probably outperform the stock market, in my opinion. But I don't know if we're going to go from 45,000 to 500,000 in a year or two. That seems a little harder for me to wrap my head around.
So let me just say this much. I started off in 64 holding a little quarter, the US quarter up, and it was made out of copper. It wasn't made out of silver anymore. And that's when it was Gresham's law came in, which says, fake money was entering the system. And then 71 was the gold got taken out of the dollar. And so I started buying that. And then I bought silver mines and gold mines and all this. So would you ever be a Bitcoin miner, Anthony?
When I started back in 2016, that's how I learned about this. Is I was mining, so I bought some computers, and I wasn't mining Bitcoin initially. I was mining something called Ethereum. But this whole idea of like, how does the network run? How do you actually produce these things? Who gets awarded those 50 Bitcoin when they were coming into the market? All those things really laid the foundation, and so I think that mining can be a great business. Over time, what we found is the bigger the miner, the better they have in terms of kind of economic scale and advantages. I think it's very similar in kind of precious metals market. And so my suggestion to most people is if you want to buy a miner and kind of plug it in at your house because it's fun and helps you learn, great. But if you want to look for a financial return, probably the best thing to do is go check out a lot of the publicly traded miners and figure out which one you think is the best one to allocate the capital there. And some of those businesses will do incredibly well. Some of them will fail, right? Similar to precious metals. And so Bitcoin and Bitcoin miners is very similar to gold and gold miners.
And I'll just say this much because I own, like I said, I own physical gold and silver. I own no ETFs. I own the gold mines. I have the biggest gold mine in America today. It's in Utah. And I own silver mines in Argentina. But I found out one big advantage about Bitcoin. It doesn't cost anything to ship it. Do you know what I mean? One of my biggest expenses, being a miner and all this, is shipping my gold and silver coins and things like that, and security and trucks and you know. So I became I converted over to Bitcoin, going, geez, I can save more money just because it's so fast. It doesn't weigh anything. I don't have to package and ship it. You know what I mean? And hire special vans and security guards. So that's a big advantage it has. So I became a convert to it. And that's when I started buying. Bitcoin hit 20,000 for a while, and then retraced down to 3, and then 1, and I watched it, and it hit 6. And that's when I bought it at 6. So I'm still in the money. I'm quite happy about that, but I still can't say I know much about it. So that's why I like to talk to guys like you who have been a miner and all this stuff. And I appreciate your guiding old guys like me along. So.
I think that we're all on this journey of learning. And one of the things that's been so cool for me is the more that I've learned about Bitcoin, the more people that I meet, the more that I learn about the world, right? And very similar, I think, to a lot of people who got very excited about gold and silver and various other assets. It taught them about money, and it taught them about economics. And it really showed them, hey, why is the world the way that it is? And so Bitcoin is doing that for a whole new generation of people. And it's pretty cool to kind of be part of that.
So in final words, I'll say the reason we are against them is this is the creature from Jekyll Island. It's about the Federal Reserve Bank. And the Federal Reserve Bank is definitely Marxist because it's centralized banking. And that's why I own gold, silver, and Bitcoin. So Anthony, thank you for being so kind with your knowledge. How do people follow you? How do people access your intelligence or your brain or your experience?
If people want, they can just go to pompletter.com. It's just POMP letter.com. And every morning I write a letter to about 260,000 investors there. And what I try to do is take all of the different information. I put a lot of data and charts and really try to kind of synthesize how I'm thinking about financial markets, about Bitcoin, about various other asset classes. And my goal is not so much to make direct recommendations of individual stocks or assets, but more so to provide a framework for how people can think about the financial world and kind of what's happening and how do you position yourself to benefit rather than suffer from a world that is devaluing your currency, that is drastically increasing global liquidity, that's playing with the interest rates, and ultimately really hurting a lot of people. Well, you can't change what the central banks are going to do, so you better figure out what they're doing and then position yourself to benefit. And that's really what I try to unpack every single morning in the Pomp letter.
Right. So this here's the book, Grunts of Giants, came out in 84. Grunt stands for Gross Universal Cash Heist. It's how the Federal Reserve Bank and these communists, these guys here, steal our wealth via our money. So one more time, Anthony, how can people get in touch with the Pomp letter? Is there any charge for it? Is it free or what?
There's a free version and then there's a paid version, but it's just pompletter.com, POMPLETTER.com.
Well, thank you for your knowledge and sharing your wisdom. And again, once again, Rich Dad makes no recommendations, and we do recommend before you buy anything, please check it out with Anthony Pompliano on the Pomp letter. So Anthony, thank you. Happy New Year. And it's going to be an exciting time for Bitcoin.
I think that so far so good. And the fact that the ETFs are approved, the halving is coming up, and it looks like the government is going to drastically reduce all of these interest rates and increase global liquidity, probably will serve as a great tailwind.
Yeah, I think you've sold me. I want to buy some more, which is it's pretty bad when an old guy like me, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I get excited. I think about it a lot. I say, man, I don't want to miss this one, the fear of missing out. But anyway, thank you, Anthony. And we'll be right back with the final for Rich Dad Radio Show. Thanks, Anthony. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. I want to thank Anthony Pompliano. Like, again, the world has changed so much. When I was a young man, we looked to the old guys. Now that I'm an old guy, we look to the young guys because the world has changed so much. But the reasons that I talk to Anthony, younger people, why I invest in Bitcoin. I don't recommend it unless you check it out yourself because we make no recommendations. But it's because I'm always buy it, but look into it because they're stealing our wealth via our money. That's what's happening in the world today. That's why we founded the Rich Dad Company, is because we have no financial education in our schools. And it's my opinion, these school teachers, these college professors are complicit with these Marxists here. So in 1965, I read this book here. I went to military school. In economics class, I had to read this book here. And I realized that my family and most academics are Marxist. They believe in taxation. They don't like the rich. They believe in labor unions. So please study, Communist Manifesto here is one of the reasons I joined the Marine Corps, and I'm still fighting communism, but we have to fight communism via our money, and that's why I have gold, silver, and Bitcoin. Thank you for watching The Rich Dad Show.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.